Yeah, that's what I said.
Call the meeting order for the 18th of August, 4 p.m. Finance Committee. We have any public comment that's not otherwise going to be discussed on the agenda. Okay. Minutes, you all got minutes this afternoon. What's your pleasure on the minutes?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to go through them.
Okay.
Since we go over to the next meeting.
To the next meeting. We'll do that. I lost my.
Okay, would you like this one? No.
Okay. So, you all did get this afternoon, I think, or this morning from Erica, it's still draft, but it's the final draft. Do you anticipate, other than providing money items, dollar amounts, this changing?
We're not, the dollar amounts are going to be in your motion.
Okay.
So, no, the only things that are going to change are just like spacing and formatting and stuff.
Okay. So this is the warrant that we go before town meeting. I think today we've asked specifically for a couple of the citizens' articles to be discussed, and then I would like to see if we could cover some additional articles, at least start a discussion. I think several of them are relatively straightforward to get a sense of where we are, so that we can move through that pretty quickly. So, beginning in order, we're not going to talk about the sewer extension, which is 1, and 2. 3, we would wait for the sewer commissioners for their recommendation, which is the Board of Selectmen. Article 4, which is the long-term lease extension authorization on the Academy Hill property. Libby, is there anything that's not otherwise obvious from what's written here?
No, it's pretty straightforward. This is being requested really by the group that operates and manages Academy Hill, and they need a lease extension for financing purposes, and there are affordable housing issues there, so we would want to support it, but there's no money involved.
And they're going to continue with their affordable housing commitments?
Yep.
And I'm not doubting you, but I heard that they actually were dropping some of it, so and I just know about it because we've seen some flow over the Sherburne Commons.
Okay. I'll have to look into that then, because most recent.
Check.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we want to have them speak to us? Or somebody?
I'm personally not feeling the need. I think it's a pretty straightforward extension request. But
Just
tell
till
me,
2076. There's no going back.
Well, this committee will have to worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't, but David, I don't have any idea what this lease is all about. Involved in it, it could be very innocuous, but I don't know that.
yeah.
I mean, maybe I should know. I mean, it's not something else. We'll find out after we pass it.
Right. So for the benefit of the company who operates the facility, we're going to extend the lease for 20 years. Presumably they get a financial benefit out of doing that, so is there any benefit for the town for extending for 20 years? I mean, are they not able to operate for the next?
Why don't I give you a summary of why they're asking for this? Because it's not, the town certainly can't operate that facility, and they do have affordable housing units, which are on our subsidized housing inventory, so we don't want to lose them. My understanding is that they are keeping them, and they're, in order to do improvements and other maintenance, I guess, of the building, they need additional funds. And they are going through Mass Housing Finance Agency, so it's all very public, but I can get more of a summary from them about exactly why they need the lease extension and what their operation is all about, if you want.
Right.
that the pleasure of the committee?
Yes.
Okay. Right, great. Article 5, suspension of our Island Home funding request, established the work group. Dr. Cartoonan, I believe that this is your citizen article, so why don't you join us, tell us a little bit about it and what you're trying to accomplish. And
I actually made a handout for you all in fairly large print for easy reference. I don't know about you, but with age, my eyes are. So if I can just, maybe I better keep one for myself. Yeah. So the purpose of this proposed work group is for voter education before the 2017 annual town meeting. The original petition had two parts. The first was requesting that consideration of appropriation for the new Our Island Home be postponed to the 2017 annual town meeting, and that's been accomplished. The other part of our citizens warrant petition was to establish a work group. And now the Board of Selectmen has come up with a very similar proposal. However, there's a difference. There's a considerable overlap in that the Board of Selectmen's proposed work group has the same members that we're suggesting, with the addition of one more, which we think is a pretty good idea. So we both said we should have a member of the FinCom, or in the case of our petition, either a member of the FinCom or a representative from the Finance Committee, a member of the Board of Selectmen, and the current administrator of Our Island Home, who's also the Human Services Director. The Board of Selectmen's proposed work group also contains a member of the Capital Program Committee, which didn't occur to us. We think it's a very good idea, and so we would want to incorporate it into our proposed membership as well. The way it differs is that our proposal includes 6 members of the work group from 3 different specified pools, whereas the proposed Board of Selectmen work group is for 3 unspecified citizens. So our proposed work group includes 2 representatives of Our Island Home Family Council, 2 representatives from the registered nonprofit Friends of Our Island Home, and 2 citizens at large, for a total of 6 rather than 3. So I'd like to point out why we have both asking for members from the Family Council and from the Friends. The Family Council at Our Island Home is made up of family members of current residents. If a resident passes away, the family members no longer take part in Family Council. Whereas the Friends of Our Island Home is open to everyone, including people who have formerly had residents there who have since passed on. And we have a number of members of Friends who are, in fact, family members of people who recently were residents at Our Island Home. And a case in point is Sheriff Perlman, who is on our board. We would also really value having a member of the Our Island Home staff on the work group, but we understand that apparently is not and will not be permitted. So the question is, what voter education, what issue does this work group we propose want to explore? Well, here are some of the issues. One is input of caregivers to the future of Our Island Home. There's a concern that the forums and meetings for information, with the exception of one that was organized independently on a Saturday, took place during working hours on a weekday when people who were concerned and wanted to give input were unable to attend. So we would plan to have a further meeting or meetings that would be convenient to people who want to attend. We would want to investigate issues of the current site because there seems to be some disagreement. We'd like to clarify that. And to dispel any public suspicion about the factual natures of what has been discussed up until so far. Also, we would want to address the intended disposition of the town-owned current site of our island home. People want to know about that. And then we would want to address the future model of care and staffing. We'd like to find out exactly what aspects of the small house model are to be incorporated, because a distinction's been made between greenhouse and small house. Greenhouse is a sort of a franchise that has rules. Small house, we're told, is much freer. We can pick and choose, sort of cafeteria style. But we would like to know specifically what aspects of small house are to be used. And it's not just that we as a group of concerned people want to know, but we want the voters to know about this very clearly. So then, what information will be uncovered that the town does not have remains to be seen. We don't know at this point. That's why we'd like to have a work group to work from now until March, starting no later than November 1st, to address these questions. And how will we communicate our findings to the town? Well, we intend to write a report, quite a comprehensive report. And one thing is there's a current website, oihfuture.com, which promotes the current plan. And certainly that would be one place to put additional information. Additionally, there is a website currently under construction by Allison Forsgrain, who's here. And frankly, I don't know the domain name, although it has been registered. But there are Nantucket voters who do not access the internet. And so we would also need to provide in some way paper copies of the report, and I think that would involve buying newspaper space. So is the additional work to come from already appropriated funds or from an appropriation? Well, last April we appropriated $1 million for planning. We're not looking to appropriate more money, and this would be an entirely voluntary work group. So no, we're not asking for any further appropriation of funds. So that is my initial response to the questions you gave me. I hope that they're clear. Mm-hmm.
The final report,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be, is that report going to include recommendations?
I think that's also something that remains to be seen. What we do want to do is to have very clear, nonpartisan presentation. Some of the things that have been presented that some Nantucket voters are skeptical about, perhaps the only thing that makes people skeptical is the way they're framed, and if we frame them somewhat differently, people will say, oh, I get it. Recommendations, I think it really remains to be seen, just as will we come up with anything the town doesn't know. We would like to go to work by November 1st and find out.
So it's going to be largely, this is what we have found out.
Mhm.
And read it, and
Yes.
it's more of an informational piece.
It is voter education prior to
Sure.
the annual town meeting.
Given that is your mission, it seems to me you don't need sanction from town meeting to
Well,
put your group together.
we would like access. We want to be sure that we have access to reports, analyses that already exist. And I think for
And
that,
if you do, they're public documents.
are they all public documents?
Administration's sitting right here.
I
I think they're
don't know
all
if
public
any-
documents.
I don't know if it hasn't been made public.
Well, we want to be sure that we will be able to ask questions. Well, let me give an example. One assertion in ourislandhomefuture.com is that 25% of the people currently resident at Our Island Home don't need to be there. Well, we can't very well ask, tell us the names of the 25% of the people who are there who don't need to be there. HIPAA would prevent that. But we would like to know something more about this assertion. This comes from SK Consultants, but it must originate from Our Island Home, and it's an interesting assertion. We also want to know is, if they don't need to be there, where should they be, and how will they live if not in the new Our Island Home? Because the fact of the matter is that we're talking about having lots of different community services for the elderly to make aging in place easier. But we don't yet have them, and it's really going to take quite a while to get them. So what's going to happen to people who are currently in Our Island Home but deemed not really needing to be there? Well, what is this about? We want to explore this. Another thing is, Nantucket is unique. We're one of only 2 nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities in the Commonwealth that are town-owned. The other one is in Taunton. Don't know what the history of that one is, but the reason that we have one is because we are an island and we can't go down the road to another community. It's the same reason we have a fire department, a hospital, and other services that people might deem are too big and complicated for a community of our size, but the answer is it has to be because we're an island. So we also have to figure out how to care for our fragile elders. One of the questions is, who are the people who become residents at Our Island Home? My impression from spending 7 hours a day there for the last year with my husband is that Nantucketers keep their fragile elders at home just as long as they possibly can, and when they finally become residents at Our Island Home, it's because they really, truly cannot safely live at home anymore. So is it the case that Our Island Home residents are not only special because they're islanders, but they're also special because they tend to be older and sicker and more fragile than the residents of, say, a small house facility on the mainland? I think we need to look into it. What are our island home residents? What are their needs? Why are they there? And we have to be very careful about this because of HIPAA. But we also really, I think, need to know about this as we're planning the future Our Island Home. And I want to make it clear that although I personally find it hard to bear the notion of giving up the current location, I'm not fighting for keeping it there at all. I would be sorry if people resident at Our Island Home were to lose that very dynamic situation. But I could be convinced that it's necessary. Right now, I'm skeptical about some things. I'm unconvinced about some things. And it seems that quite a few Nantucket voters share my feelings. So please don't think that this is any kind of fight. Not engaged in a battle. Just want to engage in more fact-finding.
John pointed out, it's so diverse. Is there going to be a consensus and a vote, a determination, or just a lot of people putting in information? What are we?
Well, I hope it will be a comprehensive report based on input, and if there are strong majority and minority opinions or perspectives on any particular issue, I think all we can do then is present both sides. I don't know how much consensus there will be. that would be something we'd find out as we work on it.
I mean, I must admit, I sort of feel the way David has expressed. I mean, I think there's nothing stopping you and folks that are curious from gathering the various public documents, I mean, forming the group and doing your work and releasing the report. At the same time, I'm not sure, if it's a town sanctioned or, I don't know.
Well, I think this,
I'm not sure what it benefits you administratively, but I'm not sure it's a negative from the town's perspective either.
town council said this is an advisory, what are their, I'm looking at you, Libby, I know you're doing something else. Sorry
Just
about
taking
that.
some notes, that's all.
Is an advisor, this is an advisory
Yep.
warrant article.
Right.
So it has no, it will not be binding on the town. Okay.
No, we're not looking to be binding on the town at all.
Then I think the, so, Mike, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, I mean, my perception, and I'm not nearly as involved as you are, Doctor, but I mean, is an awful lot of work has been done, but if it is all public information, I don't see a ton of value for sort of repackaging and reanalyzing it, but I don't see any big negative either. So if that, you and your colleagues want to do that,
Can I ask a question or make a comment?
I got
Hang on a second.
I think, it smells to me like you may be concerned that, there are public information is public information. And I know examples not in Nantucket, but in Washington, where public information is hard to get. I would say, generally speaking, my experience here is that public information is public information. But do you have a feeling about that? I mean, or some other people that you represent have a feeling that if you don't do something like this, that you're going to have a hard time getting some information?
We don't know. We don't know. We just like your support, really. And is it possible, since the first part of our petition is now moot because appropriation discussions are put off to the end time, can we revise our petition to just leave out part one?
I don't think so. I think it goes.
It has to go as it
the way
is.
it goes.
Well, that's all right. It's all right with us if it's all right with you.
Allison.
I think we just wanted to involve people from the town to learn what they know and to have them help us put together a good plan. And a lot of people have spent a lot of time coming up with the information that we have, and it would be great to include them with our group to put together the best plan possible. I mean, I think that's why we asked for a FinCom member and I don't think those people are going to voluntarily want to spend hours, in an unofficial capacity, coming to our meetings, but it would be great to have the town ask them, or you ask people to join us.
Okay. Yes.
And I can speak because I've been working with this group as well. I think the community is really looking for some solid input. And I think that they feel that they've kind of been left out of the conversation. And that this is a monumental decision for Nantucket today and Nantucket in the future as we have an aging population. We're building a school, fire station, we have a police station. I think the public needs to be, it's really like a family decision, like if you're going to put your elder parent in a facility, bring your family together, you've got to get the experts, and then you come to a consensus. I haven't seen that in this very important issue for the island, and it's very disheartening. So I would like to see
Yeah,
best practice.
let me make a comment because, as you all know, I was involved in the original work group, and that was the first outreach that the town made a few years ago when this came on board. So we did our work. The gentleman sitting next to you was on the committee. Every human service entity on the island was represented on the committee, and the hospital was represented, So we had a very broad, totally nonpartisan cross-section of people that were involved in looking through the issues. Okay, so the group did its work. Some time went by, and then the town appropriated money. They initially hired SMRT, which has got a healthcare practice. They're currently doing design-related work for the Veterans Administration for skilled nursing facilities. So the town went and hired experts in how to design and lay out the facility. They've hired SK advisors, which represent people that are, as many of you know, because they interviewed probably most of you here, a skilled, competent group of consultants that really know the healthcare business or the senior care and skilled nursing care business. So I think the town's made an awful lot of resources available. So I get a little mystified when I hear that, we're not being comprehensive. The second part of it is, when the hospital was gone forward to build its new hospital, they didn't ask the public to design it for them. And the hospitals turned experts in that. And I think we as a community should, I'm not saying we don't need public input, but we as a community should follow the lead of what I think are some pretty good consultants in this field and what input that they're providing. And that, if you can get that to come together, then you've got a dynamic that actually works. If you run two parallel tracks, we're going to continue to have, and we're going to continue to be split apart. One group suggesting that they're not getting all the information, the other group trying to drive forward and make this project happen in a fairly timely fashion.
Just my perception with the hospital, they did have a number of informational public forums. People were contacted individually. I didn't see that same grassroots informational, this is what we like to do, we like to hear from you, this is your hospital. I really think the hospital did an outstanding job giving us information, asking for our input. Sure, they used experts. Nobody expects less. But you really need to hear from the general public, and I don't think that happened.
SK Consultants and Jude Rabick, actually, as we understand it, as we were told, were actually hired by SMRT. Is that correct? They were not hired by the town. They were hired by SMRT.
The first time they were hired by SMRT with our input. The second time they were hired directly by the town.
I see. Thank you. See, that's an important piece of information. Thank you. Okay.
Anything else? Yes.
I think the perception with the hospital is that, most people on the island, we're happy to let them do the majority of the work, the input, or whatever. Because people here might go to the hospital once a year, they might go every 5 years. With the nursing home, people that are there every day. The families are here every day. They go to visit them every day. They go to Christmas, they go to birthdays, they go to Thanksgiving. So people are a lot more personally involved on an everyday basis with the nursing home, where I don't think they are at the hospital.
Well,
Great.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Just so and this applies to all the articles, there is a public hearing scheduled, I think, for the 13th of September. So you will have a chance to speak publicly, and then anybody who wants to attend will. I think immediately after that, we'll decide on what our motions are going to be on the articles. Article 6, land bank, a bond financing. Brian, can you just give us some background on this so to catch everybody up?
Sure. So as we were proceeding with the bond refunding, First Southwest had also analyzed some of the land bank bonds, which the town has backed with the full faith and credit of the town. And the 2007 bonds are eligible to be refunded. It will generate approximately an estimate of about $1 million in savings. So in order for that to happen, we need to revote to back the new bonds with the full faith and credit of the town. Now, what will happen is obviously by doing this, our potential liability will go down by the estimated budgetary savings. So the land bank is in favor of this. They've had extensive discussions with First Southwest, and it's something that they do want to pursue.
General questions?
What's the mission statement? What's the reasoning for bonds of $15 million for the land bank?
I'd have to go, I don't remember what the exact purchase was from 2007, but I will get that for you, what the debt was that was issued.
And when it's, what they're trying to do, how they're.
Well, all they're doing is refunding these bonds to get a lower coupon rate, so they'll end up with lower interest. There's not going to generate any additional funds at
No,
all.
I understand that part. I was just curious to see why
I will get you
we're
what
carrying
the-
that kind of money for 10 years, 20 years. We're trying to.
I'll get you what the original purchase was and the original debt and how much is left on it.
And Brian, when we do this kind of work, this sort of a transaction, First Southwest, I presume, is the underwriter. I mean,
They're the financial advisor, so,
well,
yeah,
when the bonds are floated, I presume so they get the underwriter's fee, or
I believe so, yes.
what does that tend to run?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to go back. We just did one, and I don't, it varies based on the size of the issuance, so I'd have to look, but I can get an estimate of what the fees will be for this if you'd like.
Okay. So, I mean, in a certain sense, there's something of a net savings, right? I mean, the town gets $1 million, but it costs.
Well, all the town really is doing is
there's
just.
$1 million net of the cost of the oil.
Well, no, because the bonds more than likely would be sold at a premium in today's market, so the premium would cover the issuance costs, so that it's a budgetary savings, okay, is the $1 million. So what the town is actually receiving is a reduced future liability if the land bank couldn't cover the debt, because it's backed with our full faith and credit. So we don't actually receive anything immediately. It's just reducing the outstanding liability that we would potentially be exposed to. So,
Okay. So it's
And
net.
improving the
and improving,
cash
right,
flow
for the land bank. Yep, yep.
In other words, yeah, I read this, and I didn't understand why they were doing it when I read it, you know. I
Right.
understand it better now, but I'm wondering about anybody else who reads this and doesn't understand.
Okay.
I didn't understand.
Well, I'll certainly get the answer to the question that Cliff asked too about what it originally was and how much is left on it.
Yeah, we might want to look at the wording here. This is still a draft. I don't think this is.
This was written specifically by bond counsel, so the wording can't be changed. Bond counsel wrote the wording for this article.
And
This-
this has been adopted by the board.
Pardon?
This has been adopted by the board. The wording can't, this is the statutory legal wording to do this action.
I understand that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, if I was a citizen reading this, I wouldn't know why we're doing it.
Okay, that's why we're trying to explain it now, and we'll have a voter's guide like we do at the annual town meeting to explain it to people.
Any other questions?
I assume this will go to improve the credit rating of the town, or at least help it.
It's probably not, it's, the $1 million reduction in our future liability probably wouldn't really do a lot to increase it, actually. But
I mean, it's designed to save
it's designed
land
to
bank money.
and reduce our exposure.
As we back the bonds, we've got to agree to allow them to
Yeah.
redeem them and float them.
Yes.
You know, it's curious to me why that couldn't have been written in here to begin with. You know, I mean, it just,
This is the exact language from bond counsel. I can't change it in order to effectuate the vote, so I'll certainly get you the information, and I'll get a,
oh, yeah, I understand
and stuff,
that.
so.
I'm just
Yep.
saying that whoever the bond counsel is that wrote this,
Well,
maybe we need to
leave
move
it-
on. Maybe we need to
Well,
move on.
with all due respect, this is statutory wording. You can't put explanatory language in here.
Right.
In the,
No.
no, not in the article. I mean, there's a lot of articles that are written like this, and I bet a lot of people would say, I don't even know what that means, and we hear it all the time. You remember the non-English,
Plain language.
the,
Plain
yeah,
language.
plain English guide issue?
Yeah, I remember.
We'll get a full summary, though, from the land bank explaining what
I can,
this is all
I'll
about.
get it from Cindy, because she sent it to me, so.
Libby, you said that that's going to be the normal.
We'll have the voter's guide,
Yes.
yep.
All right.
Any other questions? Airport, I think we're going to pass on because we don't have information from.
I can tell you that the three of them that are asking for supplemental appropriation do have bids in hand, and while they have increased, the funding split is 95-5, so the town being the sponsor is responsible for 5%. The AIP from the FAA does increase, will cover, the 90% will cover that portion of the increase, and then 5% from the state. I confirmed that with the airport. I didn't print out where the increases are, but I will forward those changes to you.
And I was going to send you this for specific discussion with Tom.
And I'll make sure that, to let him know when we decide to do that as well, to discuss it.
What you're saying at this point is at least that what we're really talking about is 5% of this.
These are what was previously appropriated. In the motion, we'll have the additional, what the new funding is. It's, I think, if memory serves, it's less than $400,000 total between the three projects.
Our share of it is? Or
Is that total, so our share is very, very minimal to what it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
So could be 5% of 400,000.
right. So,
That'll be made clear to us before.
yes, absolutely.
Article 8, landfill, cell. Brian, I understand, really understand that we're talking about an additional appropriation in the range of about $700,000. I think you all got the memo that was forwarded from George Aronson about the cell. Questions that we have that we can address to Brian or Libby?
You know, Libby, I wanted to compliment you for a change. Write this down.
The meeting is recorded.
Where's the, write that down.
No, but write that down, because I really felt that a lot of work was done on this. It was almost self-explanatory when you got done reading it.
Making a note of that, John.
Is this coming earlier than expected, or is this on schedule?
It's actually coming a little later than was expected. We thought we probably would have been under construction by now, but they were able to gain a little more room. Yeah.
Is there anything we want from them? Otherwise, when it comes time to make a motion on this. Go ahead.
Just, I mean, I looked at all the analysis of cutting things off island. This is also what's, this is all one and the same, I guess.
Yep.
You get the cell. Even though the cell's probably cheaper, there's still only so much space at the landfill. So do we spend all this time on the island home and analysis? Do we have an analysis of when you probably just, regardless of whether it's cheaper to do a cell, when we're going to stop doing cells?
No, not at present, because there is more room for probably most of our lifetimes, but there always is looking ahead at future technology that might deal with some of this material in a different way, not shipping and not storing. It might be able to gasify it or pyrolysis or something like that. So we are on the lookout for that. George is always reviewing things, and I think the board has recently discussed getting some kind of a work group together sooner rather than later, like probably within the next 6 or 8 months, to start looking at the long-term future and planning of the landfill. So it's definitely on people's minds.
Great. Anything else? Okay. Fire department. Just a little background, I guess, and there would be an appropriation amount that would be in.
Yes. Yeah, this is something of a placeholder. We think that if the fire station is not going to proceed in the very near future, we may very well have need for some kind of a trailer for either office space or living quarters or training space, something of that nature. So we are looking at the school unit right now and looking to figure out exactly what it would cost to move it and set it up at the fire station. So that will definitely be given to you in a complete breakdown shortly. And if somehow we want to make sure it fits there, obviously. And if somehow failing that, say it's just going to be too costly or whatever, maybe we're also thinking about the potential of moving it to the Surfside treatment plant and storing it. Because sometime soon we may need a trailer. So more info to come on that.
Any questions on this? Opus Harbor dredging?
So, as I had explained to the selectmen last night, in discussion with the emergency management director, Pulpus Harbor is in need of dredging, and originally, as outlined in this chart, at the April 2013 town meeting, $82,000 was appropriated. to dredge it. He's been working on getting the permits. He has an estimate that he believes it's going to cost approximately $165,000 to dredge Pulpus Harbor. And the way we're actually going to fund this is he will be putting the sand out to bid, and we estimate that the sale of the sand will generate at minimum $165,000. So this would be cost neutral to the general fund budget. And this is the way we would envision doing some of these in the future. So.
So we'll all be able to get our boats in the Focus Harbor finally?
That's what he tells me, so.
Yours is too big.
Article 11, 40 Sparks Avenue. Catherine, I believe this is your article, so why don't you join us?
Excuse me.
These are answers to the questions, but, and this is the assessor's database. I'm happy to email that to you if you like. So basically, the questions that you had sent to me, has the $400,000 been negotiated, or is it an estimate? It's an estimate for damages that will be required if heirs came forward within 6 years of taking. According to the assessors, the value of the lot is about $400,000. But I heard generally that when the town takes land by eminent domain, the costs typically amount to several $1,000s. So the $400,000, which I kind of just threw out there and said, okay, it's going to come from the reserve fund. Time was getting short to put the article in, so that, I just put that in there. So, you know, I'm not married to that term, and I certainly don't want to break the reserve fund, as I was talking to Mr. Turbot about. So, you know, I just had that figure in there. If these, do you have questions on that? Okay. If these funds are to be used to fund the acquisition costs of the land, are there alternatives? That really, I don't think has, I don't know what that means, but if the town doesn't own the land, or if there's clear title to the property, what assurance that the $400,000 is adequate to acquire the property and clear the title? If the town doesn't own the land, I would assume that whoever does and comes forward, if they did, would take ownership, and they probably.
Sorry, Michael Pearson. I've been advising Catherine a little bit about this. Just to answer this question, what is wrong with the title? There's nothing wrong with the title. The title goes back to, I think, about 1930, whereupon the owner has disappeared completely. So there's been a lot of effort made to find out who owns the land. There's been even more effort made, not by myself, but by a title examiner, to find out if there are any heirs, cousins, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, or anything connected to the last person who owned this land on a deed. And that search has basically found nothing. There was one possible heir found back in the 1930s, but nothing came of that. So essentially this land has been, I would term it, abandoned since the 1930s. Back in 97, 98, there was an effort made to include this parcel of land on a road scheme, I believe. So a lot of legal work was done about 20 years ago. And during that time, no owner turned up. So there's been a lot of effort put into finding out who owns the land, and just nobody at the moment. So going back to the $400,000, the $400,000 really is not required to purchase the land because it's going to be taken by eminent domain. That's going to cost, it's going to be negligible. The $400,000 would only be required should an owner or an heir come up and be able to prove that they are an heir or an owner. And under those circumstances, they would be entitled to compensation. They wouldn't actually get the land back, as I understand it. It would be a case of, well, we took it by eminent domain, the $400,000 is the value, there's your $400,000. So you wouldn't be asked to actually pay $400,000 to acquire the land.
So that's what it's appraised for. What's its market value?
I don't know, I'm not a realtor. So
Would that be roughly around?
I'd say close to $1 million. I mean, there's 12 West Creek Road. With the zoning at CMI now, you can have pretty serious density. You've got about 0.8 of an acre. 12 West Creek is, 10,000 square feet, and they've listed it for $1.5 million. So that's not a sold price, but that's the closest available comp. Seeing as that, I would say $1 million is very conservative, seeing that it's almost 4 times the size. it's highly valuable for someone who wants to put up apartments with the new height restrictions in that zone. I mean, if I was to build apartments anywhere on Island, I would build them there.
But how are you going to get the land?
I mean, I'm just saying, if I was a developer and I was looking for places to, and that was on the market, and I had the choice between that and West Creek Road, I'd
You know, my question is really, yeah, it's 400,000 on the assessor's database. If somebody comes forward and we've taken it, and the town has taken by eminent domain, and we have to compensate them for it. I don't think we're compensating them at 400.
Then by what, you're right, it might be open
And
more.
that's, you know, one of the,
And just throw this in as well, it occurred to me when we were sitting back there, because I haven't been involved with this too long. If this land has been abandoned essentially since 1930, I'm presuming that taxes have not been paid on it.
Right.
I was just wondering why the town hadn't taken steps to acquire the land due to non-payment of taxes. It's something I haven't had the time to look into, but
I had a question, but if a lot of land in Nantucket, way back in the 60s, was taken by, say John Doe or whatever, lack of title. Yeah, so anyway, why wouldn't we just take that same legal process?
I agree.
Okay.
I just haven't had time to find out.
Well, I asked Andrew about, but he said the taking clears the title, and there's no record of the town being deeded the property. The title report was done 20 years ago. As he remembered, it was traced to a Coffin family member who lived in New York in the 30s and 40s, as we referred to. So,
Anyway,
so
yeah, well, it would be easy enough to take it by taxes. That's the legal way to do it.
I would have thought.
Yeah.
So let's see. So I don't know if you remember back in 1997, but this was part of these other two lots here and the one in the back, which we've already been granted by town meeting. That this was, there was going to be a road through here. I don't know if you remember that, but Ted Anderson stood up and said there were unmarked graves on this part over here, or the possibility that there were unmarked graves. So those two were reserved for cemetery purposes,
Okay.
and the Cemetery Commission is now working to expand Newtown Cemetery for that. So basically, the title search is being finished right now by Attorney Brown, and it's almost complete. He has to go to New York, I guess, to go through the probate records to be sure that that's comprehensive and the title's been searched completely. The breakdown of the costs, excuse me, are explained in the business plan. The current plan is to build both facilities with modular units, and the expected cost to build and outfit both facilities is exceptionally low because our builder has promised to do it for cost. So, if you look in the business plan that I had sent to you, we have the funeral home and then we have the crematory, two separate facilities. Originally, we thought it was going to be between $800,000 and maybe $1 million for the funeral home and the crematory to build, but now we're going to 2.5 just to be sure that we have plenty of money and maybe have, a cushion as well. The ownership structure. The ownership of the land will remain with the town of Nantucket, and similar to other facilities operated on town land like Sherburne Commons or Academy Hill Apartments or the VFW building. Control of the funeral home and crematory operations will be maintained by the nonprofit, Nantucket Island Aftercare, doing business as Nantucket Funeral Home. The model for the facilities operations will still be decided at a future date. For the crematory, we may hire someone and train them. They have to have official licenses and training and things like that through the state. And they may work part-time for the funeral home as well. And for the funeral home itself, will probably be a funeral director that we hire by the nonprofit. There's several people from off island that have contacted me and would be happy to relocate here and provide services. But our other option is to gauge the off-island firm to use our facilities. Now, there's a firm, that has been doing most of the work, and they've been fabulous. And they're very interested in continuing to serve the families. And I think they do a fabulous job. One of them, in fact, is a former classmate of mine, and, they would be very happy to continue serving the families. All funds that we raise will be raised independently through fundraising. The length of time required is dependent on how quickly people open their pocketbooks and write us checks. So we want to raise about $2 to $2.5 million, and that will build, outfit, and open both facilities. And additionally, like I said, we want to establish an endowment plan, for the years when we don't have a lot of deaths. But our death rate is going to continue to rise as our population ages. Right now, we have about 50% of our people are 50 or older. So,
Great, thank you. Questions?
Yeah, you're talking about raising $2 to $2.5 million.
yes.
Wow.
Fundraising, ham and bean suppers, fundraising letters.
Fundraiser for the town.
Yeah, bake sales, that sort of thing. It's just going to be a grassroots, it's going to be $5 at a time for the most part.
It isn't made clear that money would be used for what?
To build and outfit the
And
facilities.
that would be enough to build the facility?
Yes.
You think completely? built,
Completely, yes.
With no financing or anything
Nope.
that's required?
No.
Catherine, you presume that, well, do you presume that going forward, the operation will have to continue to fundraise? Because
We probably, it's a
my own personal
nonprofit.
guess is it's, the economics of this facility are going to be close. if not-
Yes. Well, we're hoping to be a nonprofit, so. But we want to charge enough so that we cover our expenses and have a little cushion. But also, we want to make it affordable for the island residents because it is expensive, to work with off-island people, send them off from Browning, send them back. And it's been hard for families. So we want to have something local. We're very happy that the off-island people want to continue. But the fundraising itself, we see this, a couple of funeral directors from off-island have looked at this and made comments that we're not charging enough, or we're not projecting that we're going to charge enough. Within 5 years, we would know for sure, if we need to raise our prices or if they're okay the way they are. So we believe that the prices that we have noted in our business plan will cover our costs and allow us to stay open for at least 5 years so that we know, we have a better idea of, how much money we need to charge, or we'll probably continue to have a fundraiser every year, just-
Well, maybe to flip that another way, as I read your plan, and by the way, I think you did an excellent job putting it all together. You want basically want the town to offer the land for the two facilities, the two pieces of parcels, and to appropriate the $400,000, which is really, in case the heirs ever show, it's really title insurance. But then the capital cost and the ongoing operating loss or whatever support that the entity needs is going to be
Completely,
supported
yes.
by funds. So the town isn't on the hook. for
Not
any
at
of
all, no. All we want is a lease on the land.
Catherine, these numbers for, I don't mean the cost of land, but cost of the facility, where did they come from?
They came from the builder.
Builder.
The builder. Yeah, the person who's going to be building the facilities, he's going to use modular units to build a funeral home. And
He's giving you a quote.
he has. It's his business. It's his, modular home
I
business.
understand that,
Yeah.
so you have
Yeah. And we want to get this done before he dies, because he's getting older. And he keeps saying that, you need to get,
We're going to need the
you need
funeral
to get
home.
We
Maybe
give it-
he can be the first to use it.
in kind, yes, in kind costs. Yes.
So in a sense, if we can take the land for non-payment of taxes and things like that, we wouldn't need this $400,000, even if somebody did show up.
I don't know.
I think that's highly likely, yes. As I say, I don't know why it hasn't been taken already.
Hmm.
I'll have to find out.
Have we zoned it? Isn't that part of the last time we passed it? The article the town meeting was for the zoning, so that's done.
And it's a special permit situation where the planning board would issue a special permit.
Yeah, I guess if you have an estimate, I'd like to see it. Your construction costs vary from 800,000 to 2 million.
Yep.
That's a pretty wide range. If you have a line item,
Well, the funeral home itself would be around 800 to a million.
okay.
The-
But you're just saying you had an estimate, so.
Yeah, well,
I'd
this
like-
was this was
But-
him telling us what it would cost us.
Right, but if he has, a build-out estimate that's line by line, I mean.
I haven't got that from him. I could ask him, but he's never given me one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just did a quick one at 250 a square foot plus your equipment that you referenced and came up with $927,501. That's for 3,000 square feet. And, my question is, aside from the business plan, why money from the general fund? And if we can take this land by eminent domain, which is kind of valuable, why this lot in particular? I mean, I know you kind of went through that process, but would you ever consider something that is not as valuable to the town?
Well,
So there's 2 lots out, I don't know what these are doing, but there's 2 lots out on Old South Road that would seemingly be a lot less and are still in the same zoning to allow something like this.
well, when I went through the process originally, Andrew suggested this would be the best place for it,
Okay.
regarding traffic flow and, its proximity to Mid-Island and the sorts of things, I mean, the people are used to using a funeral home for.
Okay.
We talked about doing it out, in the industrial area, but it really needs to be on town water and sewer.
Okay.
We could do a tight tank or something out of town, but it's, that stuff,
Right. No, I understand.
it has to be,
And then one random question, but you mentioned a 25 to 50% markup for selling caskets. Are you allowed to do that as a nonprofit?
yeah.
You're allowed to mark up
No,
products and sell them?
there's no law against making money when you're a nonprofit.
I thought-
But those,
okay.
you buy the product, and you do have a markup. I mean, most funeral directors mark it up 100, 200%. So this would just be a margin to get the item there pretty much and just have a cushion for having it in stock.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, I just.
That was one of the things that
The
the
IRS
off-island
can be
funeral
pretty
directors said.
sensitive when they're kind of doing their, future reverse audit or however they, qualify you. They're pretty sensitive about selling things at a profit. So I just wondered how you use that money to not look like a for-profit enterprise. And then I guess also just the last thing is you referenced 50 deaths a year, and you did your plan on 50 deaths a year, but you assumed no cremation.
No, I think I did.
I just have 50
$3,500.
deaths times 2,500.
Yeah, well, that's the base. $2,500 is just counting nothing but the service fees.
Okay.
It's not counting like how much you charge for the embalming or anything else. It's just basically you are entitled to charge anywhere, I think from $1,000 to $2,500 for a service fee.
Okay.
And that's non-declinable. People have to pay it.
Okay. So that's just like getting in the door.
Yeah, and so right now, a base cremation is $3,500.
Okay.
That's what everybody pays.
And then, so what is the actual number for like a funeral? Just if you had to give an average, and maybe you don't have it now, but if you could provide that number.
Well, I can
what-
tell you,
what would it be?
recently, my mom died and we paid, we had, professional discounts and we did some of the stuff ourselves and it was around $10,000.
Okay.
Most funerals that would be comparable to my mom's would be around, I would say 13 to 15.
Okay. So is that what you plan on charging, or
No.
you plan on charging a lot less? So I guess I'm trying to know what you're trying to charge, what you foresee your average charge being.
Well, it would depend on people, if they have a full adult casket funeral,
Uh-huh.
or if they have a cremation. If they have a cremation,
Yeah,
the
for
cost
full.
for us, I mean,
Yeah, for a full funeral. That's what I'm talking about.
okay, that, I would say minimum would be around $10,000.
Okay. All right. Because that kind of changes things, or the way that I was looking at the plan. I was just using your service fees.
And if the off-island firm, if we contract with them to do it, I'm sure they would want a certain amount of leeway to charge what they're going to charge. We would hope that they would try to hold the line down a little bit, for the people here, since they're not building the facility, they're not maintaining the facility, they're not doing all those types of things, so their overhead will be less than it would be if they were off island.
And then just, you talk about fundraising. Why not fundraise first and then come to us?
Because we didn't know if we had the land.
Right, but either way, I mean, couldn't you fundraise, there's this group of
I'm
people
not
who are
doing that.
very,
Nope,
passionate.
not doing it.
Okay.
Unless
No, I'm
we
just
get-
posing a
I mean,
question,
I have
you know?
no dog in this race anymore.
Okay,
So, I'm happy to do the work, the heavy lifting, get the thing done, but I am not going to fundraise unless I know that there's land to put it on.
okay.
And I don't think it's fair to ask people to make sizable donations unless they know where their money's going to go and exactly where it's going to go.
All right.
What happens if you can't raise enough money?
Then
You've
I guess the whole project goes
what
away.
You're saying, by your definition, we have the land nailed down.
Yep.
And now we can't raise enough money.
Mhm.
So what do you do now?
Build
Goes away.
apartments.
What?
Build apartments.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't think we'll have a problem.
The town will own the land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be a problem to raise the money. I really don't. But if that happens, then, we will find a way to set up a fund to assist people to have funerals and hiring the people off island, I would assume. I haven't thought that far about that possibility.
So I have a couple of issues. The first and foremost is the use of $400,000 from the reserve fund, which, at least my reading of the use of reserve fund funds, this is marginal in terms of use, and it puts the town in a huge risk position if we really need reserve funds.
I understand that.
From strictly a fiduciary direction of the steward of the town's money, I have a real problem supporting it from the reserve fund.
As I said, I'm not married to that. I threw it out there because I didn't know what else to say in that article, so.
The second piece is, we're talking about your business, and this really is a private endeavor, maybe organized as a not-for-profit. And so sort of any other place it would be, but for the fact that you're asking for the land. And as a result, I know, included by some of the questions that have been asked, is concern about the financial viability of an enterprise like this. Is the market robust enough to support it? Is, if you get 50% of the market share and not 75 or 100%, are you really a going concern, or do we end up, does the town end up with a building that's, I guess, could be repurposed? It's probably not that single type. And then sort of the third piece of it is my understanding, having, as you know, my father just passed away, and we dealt with the Off Island Funeral Home, and my father was cremated in Duxbury. And it's my understanding, when we were having that conversation with those folks, that all of the funeral places on the Cape looked at supporting their own crematorium, and there was not enough business. So as a result, there is no crematorium closer to the Cape than Duxbury, which isn't all that far away. So to me, it sort of begs the question, are we, and again, I'm reluctant to get involved in what I think is fundamentally a private business, but for the fact that the town's got, potentially got a dog in this fight at this point. So the real question is the crematorium viable? I mean, part of your plan is perhaps viable as an extension of somebody from Off Island. Are you really going to be able to run the services, generate enough cash flow to support the costs that are associated with this? And I think that was part of what Joe was alluding to, with, being concerned about whether you're going to be upside down, or if you're upside down for a few years, whether you've got the staying power.
I don't think we have to build a crematory. I think people would prefer that we do. I had thought about building the crematory first, since 68% of our people right now are being cremated because they can't afford the full adult casket funeral. But then I thought,
Is it a cost issue? I mean,
I think a lot of it is,
my sense is that it's a preference issue. But
well, I
you
don't know.
can't afford a cemetery plot.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd find that out.
Well, the cemetery plots right now are very expensive.
Right.
I mean, the town is the most reasonable cost, I mean, in terms of that, but opening the grave, closing the grave, that's like $1,300. So all those things are expensive, and that adds to the cost of the funeral. A lot of people are doing cremation right now because it's affordable and convenient, and there is a funeral home, a crematory in Plymouth as well. It's a municipal crematory. And so people are starting to use that a little bit more as well. But then I thought if we built the crematory first, then there's no motivation for the people off island to continue to service the people with the adult caskets, because they make a minimum of $1,000 for each cremation. It's a $3,500 bill for the most part to do a cremation right now, which was basically what Ricky was charging too. But if we did all of that and didn't build a funeral home first, then there'd really be no motivation for them to continue servicing the families for a regular funeral.
Anything else, Peter?
I'm looking at the business plan now. Where is the projection of 50 deaths per year that you're going to service come from? How many deaths on the island are there per year?
I think last year there were 68, the year before that it was 83, the year before that it was 75. So I'm trying to be very conservative, and my numbers.
Is that conservative though, 50 out of 68, if there's another service provider?
I'm just stating the number of deaths.
Right, but then we're using that number to project what the revenue might be for the business.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, if
I mean, that's
we
a
had
rat-
50 out of 68,
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of different people servicing the island. We have some funeral homes. The Jewish population does use a couple of different funeral homes from Brookline and places like that. In fact, I worked in one of them. But they don't, for the most part, they use the people on the Cape. So we don't have a lot of different people, a lot of different off-island businesses servicing the families here. So I would think, be conservative by saying, if we had 50 out of 68 deaths, that would cover us.
You don't think that 50 is a large percentage of 68? I mean, if we're relying on that number, and then elsewhere in your report, you say that the number of adult traditional funerals is decreasing steadily.
Yep.
So if we're 50 out of 68 today, and we have fewer deaths in the future, we need to get an increasingly large percentage of the deaths in order to make these numbers work.
Well, as I was saying, I was trying to be conservative in the pricing as well. So if we have to raise the prices, we would, to stay even and break even. But it's my hope that we can keep it lower than the prices that they are right now.
If we take this land, however we do it, what's the obligation of the town in terms of, can it be conveyed to a private, non-for-profit enterprise, or does it have to go into bid, or how does that?
Well, there would
process
need to
work?
be a town meeting vote, and it would have to go out to bid.
I think we had said that in a 30B provisions, or,
There's procurement requirements.
yeah.
Although I thought from what Catherine said that the town would retain ownership, and you would just be
It would be a
you would-
lease.
You would lease the land for the
Right.
business.
It still has to go out to bid for a lease.
It does.
Yeah.
And it probably, yeah. it-
Five-year lease.
Yeah.
And where are you on your C3 application status?
With the IRS,
So it's been filed,
hasn't been filed yet.
so
We had another attorney that got ill and wasn't able to finish it. So Michael has taken over, and is filing
When
for
do you
us.
expect to file?
File pretty much any time. I think as Catherine's pointed out, you know, if there's no land and no possibility of going forward, no.
So we have the money to pay for it. We just need to know that it's okay to go forward and do the things
I
that we
guess
want
I'm
to do.
confused why you would just file your C3 right now, get your designation,
That can be done.
so that you, in fact, could start fundraising. That's what you desired, or
But again,
We
it's
would like
a
to.
point of fundraising if, as Catherine said, you've got nothing to fundraise for.
Well, I mean, there's other land, right?
But again, you're asking people, it's a way in prayer, isn't it? It's, we might
Not
have
really.
somewhere,
I
but
mean,
somewhere.
if you're able to raise 2.5 million and there's land out there for, I don't know, a few $100,000, it's not maybe a meaningful extra amount of money if this is something that the community needs.
Well, the funeral homes from off island have not wanted to open a business here because they had to buy the land, they had to build it, and the costs were prohibitive, otherwise somebody would have done it by now. So the only way that we really can do this, as we see it, is to have a lease on town-owned land and to raise the money and do it like the builder was saying, to build modular units at cost. You know, that is his way of giving back to the community, being a long-term resident. So that's really the only way that I think it can be done affordably and, you know, but again, we don't want to go through all that work if it's not going to be something that we can do.
Brian,
Yeah, hi.
if this goes through the way it is for this special town meeting, we've got, the last time I knew, we had $500,000 in the reserve account.
Correct.
Or have we haven't done anything there.
We have not come before you for any reserve fund transfer requests.
You're asking for us to basically function for the balance of the year with $100,000 left in reserve. I have a problem with that.
I think, yeah,
And the
I'm not
only
asking
reason,
for
the only
that.
reason we're talking about reserve fund now is because we're coming to this special town meeting. If we went to the next annual town meeting, then the issue would be, the issue of funding could be done several different ways. You know what I'm saying? So, I just have a real problem with I mean, I can't get by that, and I didn't bring it up before, what David did, but it's been bothering me since I read it, is that, you know, we know that we spend more than $100,000
Sure.
every
I
year.
just-
And I've
just-
been on this board, and we've always spent more than $100,000 on worthwhile, worthy emergency things. So I'm unwilling to go further with that. Well, I'm just gonna throw that out, because that's what this is talking about. And that's the only reason for that is because rather than waiting for the annual town meeting, if we do it now, then that's a way to get at the money, or a way to fund it. I'm just unwilling to do that at this point.
Is the $400,000 really necessary? Isn't that, in effect, the title? I mean, that's really the title insurance policy, right? I mean, that would be,
I would say part of it.
well, right, because you don't really
Because
know, you don't know what the compensation would have to be.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
Right, I mean, if
why
somebody
would you appropriate
services,
anything?
the number's likely to be some multiple of 400,000. You know, it's probably gonna be, I mean, market value for that property, if, you know, Mr. Coffin's long lost niece or nephew is found, is, you know, they're gonna want much more than that.
Sure.
So the 400,000 is sort of not enough if we need it, and it's more than we wanna spend if we don't. So, you know, can we limit this article such that the $400,000 can only be used to quiet title issues? I mean, then we're talking about a few $1,000s and not, you know, having to expend that whole sum.
That was my point, by taking it for taxes or something and doing it the legal way, they wouldn't be able to come back and get anything.
Right. I mean, all we have to do is make the title insurable, and then somebody's going to sell you a title insurance policy for a few $1,000s, and everybody feels good about that.
I'm happy to do it any way you ask me to do it.
Yeah, I just think that like, the David pointed out, I don't think that's even an appropriation.
Well, as I said,
Reserve funds.
time was getting short, and I just kind of threw it in there.
But we could, solve that. I mean, I think there's a different debate you can have about, is this something the town wants to do? But I think we can maybe settle the money issue if it's, not the way it's written, no.
Then you can strike that at town meeting too, can't you?
You can make a recommendation and do it any way you like. I'm happy to have you do it.
I mean, I do want to point one thing out. If you take it for non-payment of taxes, I have to go back and check on it, but there's a very lengthy process to be able to dispose of property when the town takes it for non-payment of taxes. They have to foreclose on the property, and that requires land court to go to land court to get done, and that is not a 1 month process to do. And it's a long process. It just doesn't happen overnight. So I want to, if you take a property because of non-payment of taxes, in order for the town to own it, you have to foreclose on it, and you have to go through land court to do that. We did it in my prior community. It's a very lengthy process.
I thought it had to be land courted. Anyway.
A year.
Probably a year or more, potentially, yeah.
Catherine, didn't you say that Andrew told you that the title issues are quieted when you take
When you
property
take
by
land.
eminent domain?
It clears the title piece up.
So maybe that's enough. I mean, any of the local attorneys can tell us what needs to be done to make the title insurable, and that's what's at issue.
And in terms of the towns, because we've had articles on the last two town meetings on this Parks Avenue property, the town has in effect already said that it's willing to let and maybe this is wrong, willing to let the land be leased to the entity and used as a location for a funeral home. Is that correct? As well as the land, well, I mean, so we've had articles in the last two town meetings that related to this property and the property by the airport, that's the preferred location for the crematory. So we had those
People
articles.
did,
What did town meeting vote on?
I think
Zoning.
Yeah, we voted to change
So there-
zoning so that this property would be in a zone where this would be possible by special permit. And then we had a home rule petition that I believe said a funeral director doesn't need to own property here. And then the state legislature said that's okay.
Okay.
But even if you acquire this, is it still true you're going to have to put out a bid for?
Yep. I understood that. Go ahead. But it has to be a nonprofit to do it.
Well, on the surface, I can't support the transfer of the money from the reserve fund. So I'm not sure, since that's the request that the committee made, and maybe people feel differently about it. So I don't know how to get around that as a personal point. I know you don't want to go out and fundraise before you know where the land is. I guess I'm not totally sure I understand what your concern would be. One can go and fundraise. You can put your money into escrow. It can be returned. And that's exactly what happened out in Nantucket for the property. That money was fundraised ahead of having knowledge that the town was going to acquire it. So private donors made a contribution with the understanding that if the town did not acquire the property, their money would be returned. To me, that is a signal whether this is commercially viable. I think that you would want to understand the commercial viability of this, notwithstanding your projections. And if you get support in the community to raise the money, then I think that's a signal that it's commercially viable and land can be found, if not this parcel, then something else that's suitable. And then you could go forward on it. I think you need your C3 if you're going to go and raise the money. That's why I would urge you to get it filed, so that contributions from architects and engineers and others are tax deductible and the like. And I think if you're then in the community that way, you'll get a pretty quick read whether the community needs this kind of facility. And I think part of the dilemma, and it's a one-person opinion, the service that we provided was as good or better than at least for my family.
Yeah, I
If
understand.
we were on, but we're just one family, so I don't, when Nantucket doesn't make, some, you can draw a conclusion from.
Anecdote, not data.
Anyway, that's my, personally, I just don't see how, in good conscience, this committee could approve $400,000 out of a transfer, as a transfer out of the
I
reserve.
totally get that. I
So-
totally get that. And I understand and I agree.
Anyway.
But again, I threw it out there because I didn't know what else to say.
Yeah.
So I figured that would be changed in the recommendation.
It just seems to me that we're putting the cart before the horse here. Part of what, this gets to part of what David said. This has been bothering me from day one, and that is the starting point of this whole process is a piece of land. And my view is, if I were doing it, even as a nonprofit or as a profit, I would want to make sure that the finances were nailed down, which means to me, I would do the fundraising first, like David said, because you could do it in a qualified way. Once you know you can fundraise, once you raise that amount of money, now the question is, where do you want to put it? Because the question is that may be the preferred place, but there may be other options. And and as time goes, you may find that those other options are better than this anyway. Or there may be other town land that can be leased to that. So it seems like the starting point of the process of looking at this, we're starting out, which is really the ending part of the process, not the beginning part of the process. If you see what I'm saying.
I see what you're saying, but I don't agree.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? Great. Catherine, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice business plan.
Thank you for your, thank you for your time.
Good business.
Thanks.
That's not what I'm saying.
I don't want to make a career out of it, though.
You know, I bet you don't. I read it and I said, wow, she put a lot of work in it, baby.
This is purely my own,
Okay.
you're welcome to it, and I'd be happy to send you the Excel file.
Thank you so
But
much.
it sort of underscores a little my own.
Article
concern
12
about the business
is,
model.
Okay.
I
Thank you
think
so much.
it's a
But take a look at it, and I'd be happy to send you an email at the end.
decision,
Okay,
so we're going
that'd be great.
to
Thank you so much. Thank you.
13 is zoning, I think, 14 is zoning, 15 is zoning, 16 is
Zoning.
zoning,
And that's it.
there's a drink at the end.
There you go.
And we're going to wait until we hear from, Joe needs to leave, thank you, Joe. We're going to wait until we see the recommendations from the planning board. The only question I would have, and I sort of, Stephen and Henry, is there anything in these zoning articles that is going to give rise to some financial implication that's not otherwise understood, that is something that we wish to make an opinion known to the planning board, or are we?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this, and John kind of alluded to it at our last meeting, but these changes affect our capacity as a town and how much is going to get built, and they flow downhill. I mean, when you turn lug 2 into lug 1 and how many new houses are coming up, I mean, how does that affect our kind of net increase in the town and other places? How does that affect traffic? And I just feel like we kind of look at these zoning articles and say, all right, yeah, sure, but are we really looking at how it affects, how the whole area might change? I mean, I especially look at the South Shore Road zoning changes. I mean, that's a lot of new potential buildings. And I'm not saying that I'm against every zoning article, but I just wish there's a little bit more explanation on kind of a 30,000-foot view of how adding, dozens of lots to an area that, before it wasn't as dense is going to affect, how is South Shore Road going to change? How's that intersection going to look now between Surfside and South Shore Road? I mean, does anyone have any feedback on that?
I think that's the problem with zoning changes that come from citizens and not from the planning department, is you don't have anybody who you can ask those questions.
Mhm.
You can ask the questions, but you're going to hear more about not speaking specifically about proponents for any of these articles, but typically we hear more about affordability issues and wanting to leave something for your children, or, you know, they got to do it across the street. You don't hear reasoned arguments about why density is appropriate in the location that you're discussing.
Right.
So those are my general concerns about all these, and the sewer issue also.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, every time you add sewer to a property, there's some effect on what can happen at the treatment plant. I'm not so concerned about the capacity, but there's more density also in that neighborhood. And it may be appropriate or it may not, but we know that the recommendation didn't come from planning, you know, didn't come from the professionals. So, you know, in this case, we know that it's a developer who wants it done. Doesn't make it necessarily the wrong thing for the town to do, but, you know, we should know that that's where the request is coming from. And then those will have financial impact on the town. When you have a few of these every year, they add up. So that's it.
So where does that leave us? Does it,
You know, I
we
think
just to provide some
I mean,
correspondence to the planning board?
yeah, I mean, it's a lot to ask for, I guess, in order to follow our timeline here, but I just think
I think we can ask maybe Andrew to weigh in, even though
Yeah.
we can't ask him to defend these articles because they're not his, but he may have an opinion about.
I would, Bill, on the sewer thing, we're asking that sewer committee
Right.
to tell us whether they recommend it or not. And I would say we should do the same here. Now, the thing that concerns me is that generally speaking, in the past, when we've got an opinion from Andrew, and I'm not having, you know, picking a fight with Andrew, I'm just saying that generally they talk in terms of no, it's not spot zoning, no, it's not, you know,
Right.
but I think we're talking about a larger issue, and that is, how does this fit into the overall plans of the town, and what are the implications of it from a point of view of facilities and you know, and particularly when you get around certain areas like Old South Road. I mean, any development at this stage beyond what has already been approved is going to create problems. We all know that.
Right.
We all laugh about it. People talk about it all the time. So the issue is, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I know I agree. I mean, it's, you know, for me, I think the most prevalent thing that I think about is transportation. I mean, we all know that the bottom half of Surfside Road is a wreck right now, you know, between the two schools and the Bartlett Road intersection. And so, you know, again, when you look at, you know, just to use South Shore Road, because we have it in front of us, you know, what does that do? You know, does that just create gridlock from South Shore Road to, you know, all the way to the high school? And I know that's kind of hyperbole, but it is a reasonable question that's not being addressed beyond the sewer implications. I mean, we need to be thinking about how more people or more dwellings are going to affect certain areas, and beyond just what people want to do to leave stuff for their kids.
So, the planning board holds a public hearing, they make recommendations on all of these, and then they come to us, so we don't act until we've seen the planning board's recommendations. We certainly can request, which we can do in writing, to them for, when they make their consideration, that, you know, these 5 things or whatever are part of their deliberation.
Yes, I mean, something
they can
similar
blow
to the
us.
sewer checklist would be nice.
You know, that's exactly this.
I mean, they already have a master plan, they've already obviously got zones, like John said, and if it's not
Yeah.
spot zoning, then they should chime in.
The problem, yes, they should, and the problem is when it comes from a citizen, it sort of comes in sideways.
You know,
I think, well, I thought Andrew was keen to be part of that.
Leona Tripp.
This one has come up a few times. Maybe it was sponsored by the planning department before, but this is a citizens article. So, you know, Andrew will tell us, and he's right, that you can't charge impact fees for subdivisions, but it might be nice for this committee and for voters to know, you know, what the potential impacts are, you know, how many extra people, how many extra cars, what that relates to in facilities, the same way we made Richmond Company do that. I mean, there are formulas for that kind of thing, and
Anybody ever seen that work?
The Richmond companies? No, we saw drafts we didn't like. We saw information that was not based on the criteria that I think you set out. So no, I didn't see the final
They
word.
ever finished?
I haven't seen anything.
That's worth, I will make a call and find out, because I sat originally with those guys, as did other people, and then they said that they would provide the analysis for review.
That's right, they never have.
Were you in that meeting as well, Jim? Or was it Rick, I know, was in it?
You and I wasn't at the meeting, but you and I spoke about it.
Okay. And you haven't, selectmen haven't seen anything? Okay. Okay. Because that, part of what we talked about is that might be a template that
Right.
could be adopted.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a sloppiness about that. There's a sloppiness about that that makes you nervous, you know, and one could say that these are all little things, you know, but of course the problem is that a lot of little things become a big thing, you know, but there's kind of a sloppiness about that, and I don't mean to be, I'm not being critical as much as I'm saying, this is what I observed. Just like David, just like you said, I remember very clearly, they said they were going to give us the study,
Right.
and we haven't seen it. And has anybody asked for it?
Well, I'm taking that action. I will.
But, you know, generally speaking, on something like that, I would expect our planning department to ask for it. I mean, that's kind of their job to follow up on.
Wasn't it part of the criteria when they passed the article?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by what I'm saying. There seems to be around this, you know. When you talk about sewers, I get less concerned because they have a checklist. They go through it. We have, I mean,
I think historically there's been some, you know, like the finance department and the planning department have been at loggerheads on issues, like this is my territory, you need to stay out of it. That never made sense to me, and increasingly it makes less sense as we have very expensive projects that come on related to the number of people that we have on island. Most of the zoning changes that we have are about increasing density.
yeah, they all.
I mean, I think there needs to be there should, I think, be a better process where we cooperate as we talk about these issues.
Anybody want to volunteer to draft something we can send to the planning board?
Relative to these articles specifically, or?
About things that you want, we collectively want to make sure they consider, or ask them to consider?
I think it would, if I were to write something, it would probably include many of the elements that you laid out for the Richmond Company's analysis. Understanding that this isn't a developer, but these are, you know, similar
Same
issues. Yeah, it's just on a smaller scale.
Yep.
So you're putting a monkey back on that.
So I can find that email
So
and I can
leaking
dust it off.
monkey, leaking monkey problem.
He was nudging it hard.
All right, I will draft something. For consideration. Very good. Anything else? Getting back to Catherine's article on the $400,000, do you have any sort of, I don't know what the will of the board will be, but if we don't approve the $400,000, it doesn't strike me that we have an affirmative responsibility to find money elsewhere for it.
Well, just to, I guess, make sure that there is one thing. Town meeting does have the legal authority to transfer from the reserve fund. So just to let you guys know, even if you vote no as not to adopt it,
Is that the case? 'Cause I actually
Yes,
was
it
looking
is.
at the Department of Revenue to see if I
Yes.
could find that.
It is the case.
Okay.
So town meeting could have the legal authority to do it if you chose not to adopt the article, just to let you know.
I thought it was unusual, unforeseen
Town meeting has the ability to move money at an annual or a special to any account that it deemed that that votes in majority to do. I've already asked the question because I thought the same, so.
That's going to be the case, and we'll deal with it.
Well, it doesn't mean that that I couldn't try to find another funding source, but that, I don't know exactly what it would be. No, it's incumbent upon the sponsor of the article.
Also, keep in mind that the article authorizes the Board of Selectmen to take this action. They're not obligated to take that action.
Right.
David, as long as you brought that up, the issue as you look at it, to me, is, and that's what I'm trying to get at it with her, is about putting the cart before the horse. It really, the question that I have is that you ask about where'd you get this number, where'd you get that number. The basic, when you get down to basics, you don't know where when they say, well, we're going to raise $2.5 million. Well, you know, then raise it and let's talk about it. But you know, I think we're going at this. There's too many questions about it.
Mr. Chairman, a different matter?
Yes.
Last night, the board established a new fire station work group, and we'd like one member of the FinCom. I don't know if you want to, I know it's not on your agenda, so if maybe if it could go on your next agenda to get a designee.
Okay. Think about it. We'll deal with it. We'll deal with it at our next meeting. Also worth noting, the town actually did not form a work group for the island plan
Correct.
and dropped a bunch of articles, which is why you see the repost. Anyway, next meeting, which at the next meeting I would like to have a discussion about Nantucket and Somerset sewer article, which I believe, as well as Mr. Breeder's article, and I believe that the order got changed so that Mr. Breeder's article will come first before town meeting, which is a proposal to delay, if I recall correctly, the project until we vote on it at the annual town meeting. And then obviously we will, I guess the question, Libby, would be, if we vote to delay it, then what happens with this Article 2?
I think it would become moot. I guess I want to firm that up with John, but I guess if we're delaying it, we wouldn't act on
Article
it.
1 is an advisory. I mean, it becomes an advisory, according to what I was reading here by the town council.
Right. That's right.
So what they're saying is that
I guess it would come before us and we would vote on it or not. I mean, yeah, vote on it.
I would assume that
Yes
if
or
town
no.
meeting voted to postpone it on Article 1, then Article 2 is not going to make it.
Perhaps.
That
Yep.
John, you may be too rational.
could be.
So we will have Mr. Breeder, and we will have the town, and I would propose, if you have questions that you want addressed by either party, you funnel them to me, and I will formulate them, and I will send them out to the individuals. So that, much like today, they come reasonably prepared to address things ahead of time, so we're not having a rambling conversation. Does that sound reasonable? So, with that said, what today is, it's the 18th. What's your pleasure in terms of the next meeting? Sooner, later, take a breather, come back in the beginning of September? Do you want to get this sewer stuff off?
Well, I think a lot of it, a lot of it depends on, what I'm interested in Article 1 is Mr. Greider is, what I said to somebody, I said, what new information, do you have any new information? They said, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Right. Maybe it'd be better to address that sooner than later. If there are substantive issues to discuss, we can do that
Okay.
at another meeting.
I'd almost like to see what they have now.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about it, but
Well,
I'd like to see if
they
there's
have
science
something,
behind it.
if they have a document, some documents with new information, I'd like to know what it is. And I'd like to know it sooner because that at least gives us a chance to get our arms around it.
Mhm. Yep.
Libby, would a week from today be too soon for your folks?
The
Would be the
25th?
25th.
It shouldn't be, but why don't I round them up and make sure, I myself will not be here, but
No, I won't
that's
be able to
okay.
be here this
All
morning.
right. I think it's important, Libby, we try to make sure you can be here. How about going into early next week? How about, is the 29th?
I'm out for
You're
2
on
weeks,
vacation?
beginning this Sunday until the week of Labor Day. But, I mean, feel free to.
Have fun with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Stephen, you're not gonna be here.
The 25th or 26th, I can't be here.
Um,
You know what, if we met early on the 25th, I could. I just would need to leave by 5.
David, I'd personally like to see something from them before we meet again. But then maybe I'm a minority in that, but then from my perspective, I'd like, if they have something, I'd like to see what they have. And then give a chance to read it, and think about it, and then we would.
So what if we were to meet either the 29th or the 30th? Sort of our regular meeting time, and with a request that information be provided to us a week from today. I can reach out to them. Well, Libby can help facilitate with her team.
Yeah, what do you need from us?
I'm gonna give you a list of
Okay.
stuff, but I mean, I think it should be stuff that's pretty readily available.
Okay. So the 29th or the 30th?
Yeah.
30 is better.
30's better
Okay.
for me also.
So 30th at 4 o'clock. Here, Brian, can you make?
I'll get the room,
Thank you.
yeah, or attempt
Um,
to.
what-
Might be tough. I'll have to look.
Tuesday is going to be tough in here because of HTC.
Thursday, the 30th.
Tuesday the 30th.
Tuesday the 30th.
So we'll have to see it downstairs.
We'll,
We'll
yeah,
work.
we'll look and see, if not, then maybe the school.
Yeah, by the way, some of your meetings are going to be at the school for this because they're all booked with standard meetings.
As long as I can unplug that water machine so we can hear each other.
Steve, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
I'll send you next time. Thanks.
Okay.
Will you
Yep.
please just make sure that when you're forwarding the information, CC Brian too, because if I'm not here, I'm not going to get it.
I'll get it to both of you. Anybody else in the administration? You want to make sure. On all correspondence, I mean, I'm mindful of flooding you with.
Yes, and thank you very much. I think on this, for the next 2 weeks anyway. Yeah, just, you can send it to me also, but Brian and probably Greg.
Okay. All right. So we're shooting for the 30th
At 4.
4 p.m. Location to be decided. And hopefully Brian can get that squared away. And I will follow up with Richmond tomorrow with a phone call, and I will draft something for the planning department, planning board, which I will probably not circulate for collective response because of our open meeting. Is that okay? Otherwise, we can wait until the 30th and you can see it.
I'd get an